The late afternoon sun slanted low over Maplewood, Indiana, painting long shadows across the cracked sidewalks and weathered porches of the quiet neighborhood. At 412 Elm Street, the house stood like a forgotten relic, its faded blue paint peeling in ragged strips, the windows dark and shuttered, the front yard overgrown with weeds and wild grass. Children nearby whispered stories of the place, tales of strange noises and flickering lights, but no one dared step close after dusk. Officer Dana Kessler pulled her cruiser up beside the curb, the engine ticking as it cooled. She glanced over. At K9 Rex in the back seat, the German shepherd alert but calm, his dark eyes scanning the street with practiced vigilance. This was supposed to be a routine call. Trespassers reported near a long-abandoned property. Nothing out of the ordinary. But Dana's gut tightened ever so slightly. Sometimes routine was the quiet before the storm. "Ready, boy?" she murmured as she opened her door. Rex's tail flicked, and he hopped down with a soft padding sound. The porch creaked beneath Dana's boots as she approached the house. The front door hung ajar, swaying gently with the breeze. Inside, the smell of dust and damp lingered, a scent she'd come to associate with forgotten places. The floorboards groaned under her weight, and cobwebs draped the corners like delicate curtains. "Rex, stay close," she whispered, gripping the flashlight tightly. Her voice echoed softly against the walls. The basement was the real concern. It was the kind of place where shadows lengthened and stretched, where light fought to survive. The steps led down into darkness, cold and still. Dana's flashlight pierced the gloom, revealing old crates stacked haphazardly, broken furniture, and an unmistakable chill in the air. Rex's nose twitched as he padded down the stairs, ears erect, every muscle tense. Then, without warning, he stopped, his body rigid. Dana followed his gaze to a corner of the concrete floor, a patch that looked different, newer, smoother. The faint sound of scratching broke the silence, and Rex's claws tapped against the surface as he dug fervently. Dana knelt beside him, brushing away dust and dirt with her fingers. The patch was cold, almost unnaturally so. "What do you see, boy?" she asked softly. Her radio crackled. "Unit 7? Any sign of intruders?" The dispatcher's voice was flat, expectant. "Nothing yet. Place is empty, but Rex is fixated on this spot." "It's like he smells something underneath," Dana replied. Rex scratched harder, pawing at the concrete with increasing urgency. The sound echoed hollowly in the basement. Dana's heartbeat quickened. The assumption that the basement was clear, that this was just another abandoned house with nothing left but memories, was suddenly in question. A cold draft swept past, raising goosebumps on Dana's arms. She reached for her phone and dialed Detective Raoul Bennett. "Raoul, you're not going to believe this," she said, voice low but tense. "Rex just started scratching at a concrete patch down here. Looks fresh. Like someone buried something." There was a pause on the other end. "I'm on my way." Dana glanced back at Rex. The dog's eyes gleamed with intensity, fixed on the ground. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The house held its breath, and so did she. Something was hidden here. Something beneath the floor, quiet and waiting dot as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the street into twilight. Dana knew this wasn't just a trespassing call anymore. It was the start of something far darker, something that would unravel. A nightmare long buried beneath the silent house on Elm Street. Detective Raoul Bennett arrived just as twilight faded into a deep, creeping darkness. The streetlights flickered on, casting harsh pools of light over the cracked pavement. His boots crunched on gravel as he approached the yellow crime scene tape stretched taut around the weathered house. The neighborhood was buzzing quietly. Neighbors gathered behind the tape, whispering in hushed tones, their eyes wide with curiosity and fear. Inside, Officer Dana Kessler stood at the edge of the basement stairs, flashlight beam dancing over. The patch of concrete where Canine Rex was relentless, pawing and scratching. The dog's usually calm demeanor was replaced by a fierce determination, his ears pinned back slightly as he growled low in his throat. Rawl crouched beside Dana, shining his own flashlight on the spot. "You sure this dog's onto something?" he asked skeptically, arms crossed. "I've seen Rex sniff out all kinds of things," Dana said quietly, eyes never leaving the spot. "And he won't stop. That patch of concrete looks newer than the rest. Someone poured it recently. We need to see what's underneath." Rawl nodded and called in the forensics team. Within an hour, specialists arrived, carrying tools and equipment. The basement was transformed from a dusty, forgotten space into a controlled crime scene. The smell of damp concrete mixed with something faintly metallic and sharp, the unmistakable hint of decay. Slow, careful work began. The team chipped away at the smooth patch of floor, each tap of the hammer echoing through the silence. The neighbors outside craned their necks, eager for any news, but keeping their distance as the concrete cracked and crumbled. A small rectangular box emerged from the rubble, tightly wrapped in thick plastic and burlap sacks, stained dark with age. Dana's stomach tightened. She recognized the weight, the shape, the terrible possibility. The box was pried open. Inside lay a tangle of bones, fragile, brittle, and unmistakably human. Not. The room seemed to hold its breath. Dana felt a sharp ache in her chest as memories flooded back. The missing persons report filed 8 months earlier, the desperate family interviews, the unanswered calls to Carolyn Pierce. Carolyn had been 29, a waitress known for her bright smile and kind heart, who had vanished without a trace. Her disappearance had chilled the community, but grown cold with time, until now. Detective Bennett called for the medical examiner to verify. Dental records, DNA swabs. Every test confirmed the grim truth. The remains were hers. Outside, the crowd murmured, the reality settling over them like a dark cloud. The basement, assumed empty and forgotten, had been a tomb. Dana knelt beside Rex, who lay panting, eyes weary but alert. "You did good, boy," she whispered. "You found her." But questions tumbled through her mind. Who had buried Carolyn here? Why choose this house? And how had everyone overlooked the signs? The house suddenly felt colder, the shadows deeper, as if the walls themselves held secrets that refused to be told. Detective Bennett paced, rubbing his temples. "This changes everything. We need to dig into the house's history, the previous owners. Someone new." Dana nodded, feeling the weight of what lay ahead. The basement had been assumed clear, but now it was the epicenter of a dark mystery, one that would unravel far beyond these crumbling walls. And as the night deepened outside, one truth was certain. This was only the beginning. The morning after the grim discovery, the neighborhood around 412 Elm Street buzzed with attention that hadn't been there before. Police cars, news vans, and forensic teams created a web of activity, transforming the quiet suburban block into a hub of investigation. Behind the yellow tape, neighbors whispered in small clusters, their eyes filled with disbelief and fear. Carolyn Pierce's name was on everyone's lips now. The young woman they thought lost to time was buried just beneath their feet. Detective Rawl Bennett stood at the edge of the crime scene, scanning the area with a sharp eye. His mind was already working through the fragments of evidence, trying to piece together a story that still felt incomplete. The question on everyone's mind was simple but haunting. Who had hidden Carolyn in that basement, and why? The answer, as it began to emerge, pointed toward the house's previous owner, Edgar Eddie Rourke. A handyman with a checkered past and a reputation for trouble, Eddie had vanished shortly after Carolyn's disappearance. His name had slipped through whispered gossip for months, but never surfaced as a suspect until now. Neighbors recalled odd details. Mrs. Green from across the street remembered hearing the scrape of a shovel late at night, the unmistakable thud of earth being disturbed. "I thought it was just the raccoons," she said, voice trembling. "But now I'm not so sure." Carolyn's phone records told their own story. The night she vanished, her last call was placed to a number registered to Rourke. A Craigslist ad for painting work. That's how Carolyn had come into contact with him, or so the evidence suggested. But the harder Rawl and Dana dug, the more they realized how little Eddie wanted anyone to know. When they found him, Rourke was hiding out in a run-down motel several states away, his face drawn and nervous. The interrogation room was cold and sterile, a stark contrast to the house where Carolyn had met her fate dot at first. Rourke denied everything, his voice smooth, but his eyes darting with unease. "I don't know what you're talking about," he insisted, shifting in his seat. "I haven't seen Carolyn in months." But under pressure, cracks began to form. His story stumbled over small details, inconsistencies slipping through his carefully constructed lies. The investigator showed him the evidence, the phone records, the location data, the purse found buried in his shed with dried blood that DNA matched to Carolyn Rourke's facade finally broke. "Look, I didn't mean for it to happen," he said, voice hoarse, eyes downcast. "It was an accident." But the word accident did little to ease the tension in the room. Rawl leaned forward, eyes cold. What kind of accident buries a woman under concrete? The confession was slow and reluctant. Rourke admitted to luring Carolyn to the house with a promise of work, but a confrontation had escalated. Panicked, he tried to cover up what he called a tragic mistake. Yet, even as he spoke, Rawl sensed there was more left unsaid. The case was far from closed. Back at the station, Dana and Rawl sifted through piles of cold cases, searching for anything that connected to Rourke's past. 3 other disappearances from nearby counties bore troubling similarities. Young women, last seen near homes where Rourke had worked or lived, vanishing without explanation. The basement of 412 Elm Street had exposed a horrifying truth. Carolyn's body was just the first piece of a larger, darker puzzle dot. As dusk fell once again over Maplewood, the community braced itself for the revelations to come. The nightmare beneath the silent house was far from over, and the shadows of the past stretched longer than anyone had imagined. The rain came early that morning, washing the streets of Maplewood with a cold, relentless drizzle. Inside the interrogation room, Eddie Rourke sat alone, his face drawn and pale beneath the flickering fluorescent lights. The weight of what was happening pressed down on him, yet he remained stubbornly silent until Officer Dana Kessler stepped in, her voice low and steady. "You're not alone in this, Eddie. There's more, isn't there?" she said gently, sliding a cup of water across the table. Rourke's eyes flickered, his defenses cracking for the first time. The silence stretched thick and heavy until finally his voice emerged, a whisper tangled with fear. "I didn't do it by myself," he admitted. "There's someone else, someone darker than me." Detective Rawl Bennett exchanged a glance with Dana, the room suddenly charged with urgency. The pieces of the puzzle were shifting, and the truth was starting to unravel in ways no one had expected. Rourke described a former business partner, a man named Lucas Shaw, a shadowy figure with ties to the underground world of stolen goods and illegal dealings. Shaw had come into the picture years ago, when Rourke was trying to make a living as a handyman. The two had a falling out, but their paths crossed again in the months before Carolyn's disappearance. "Lucas. He's dangerous," Rourke said, voice trembling. "He's involved in things you don't want to know about, and if Carolyn got too close, well, she paid the price." The confession sent shockwaves through the investigation. Authorities reopened cold cases that had been dismissed or forgotten. disappearances from surrounding counties, women vanishing without a trace. The connections to Shaw's shadowy network began to emerge, hinting at a chilling pattern. Meanwhile, forensic teams returned to 412 Elm Street. Rex led them to a second patch of concrete at the back of the house, hidden beneath years of dirt and debris. The team carefully chipped away, uncovering a grim sight. More bones, smaller and more fragile than Carolyn's. The remains belonged to a child, the details horrifying and unexplained. The community's shock turned to dread. Silent House wasn't just a tomb for one victim. It might conceal far darker secrets. Detective Bennett's team worked tirelessly, chasing leads that took them deep into the underbelly of a world most wanted to ignore. Lucas Shaw, the elusive partner, remained at large, a ghost in the shadows. Elusive and dangerous. Back at the precinct, Dana felt the strain settle in her bones. Nights became restless, haunted by images of concrete floors and scratching paws. Rex, usually steady and strong, seemed attuned to tension, his sharp senses on constant alert. The town was gripped by fear. Questions echoed in every corner. How many victims had been hidden in basements like this? How long had this darkness festered beneath their feet? Rourke's revelation marked a turning point. The case was no longer a simple murder investigation, but a sprawling net of crime and horror. As rain hammered the windows and thunder rumbled overhead, Dana knew the hardest part was just beginning. The basement was no longer just a place of secrets. It was a battleground where justice and truth fought against shadows and lies. And somewhere out there, Lucas Shaw watched and waited. Weeks had passed since Edgar Rourke's confession rocked the investigation. Yet Lucas Shaw, the man Rourke accused of complicity, remained a ghost, slipping through the cracks of the justice system like smoke. Detective Raul Bennett's team pushed harder, fueled by the growing weight of evidence and the chilling discoveries tied to 412 Elm Street. Rex was brought back to the scene, his keen nose leading the way once more. As Dana watched, the dog's body tensed, nostrils flaring, as he followed a scent trail around the back of the house. There, hidden beneath years of overgrown weeds and discarded debris, was another concrete patch, half covered and almost forgotten. The forensic crew arrived quickly, their faces grim as they began chipping away the hardened surface. Every tap of the hammer echoed like a heartbeat in the still air. As the concrete cracked and crumbled, a second box was uncovered, smaller this time, tightly wrapped in plastic and aged burlap. The air grew heavier with the metallic scent of decay. When the box was pried open, the team found the fragile bones of a child. The discovery sent shockwaves through the investigators. This wasn't just a case of one tragic death. It was something far darker, something that had been hidden beneath the surface for years. Dana stood silently as the medical examiner carefully examined the remains. The child's identity remained unknown, but forensic analysis suggested the bones had been there for much longer than Carolyn's. Detective Bennett's mind raced. The investigation broadened, the quiet suburban neighborhood unraveling under the weight of buried horrors. Police departments from neighboring counties shared data, reopening cold cases in search of connections to the shadowy figure of Lucas Shaw. The local media seized the story, dubbing Rex the hero dog of Indiana. Photos of the alert German shepherd, paws poised and eyes sharp, flooded the evening news. For Dana, Rex's unerring instincts were a beacon in the darkness, the difference between truth and oblivion. But the community was fractured, trust dissolved. As old fears resurfaced, parents locked doors tighter, and whispers of more secrets beneath their feet sent chills through the town. Meanwhile, Rourke, behind bars, grew quieter. He had offered names, hinted at conspiracies, but refused to fully cooperate. His silence became a barrier, frustrating the team desperate for answers. Dana felt the pressure mounting. The nights grew longer, the nightmares more vivid. Rex, usually a calming presence, sensed the strain and refused to leave her side. Together, they faced the darkness that seemed to stretch endlessly. One late evening, a breakthrough came. A local handyman tipped off investigators to an abandoned cabin deep in the woods, a property once linked to Shaw. The cabin was a time capsule of fear. Blood-stained tools, hastily buried dirt, and discarded belongings of missing women. The search intensified. Authorities scoured Shaw's known haunts, following a trail woven with deception and violence. Yet, the man himself remained elusive, his shadow looming larger with every discovery. Back at the precinct, Dana reviewed the evidence, her mind replaying the first day they found Carolyn. That basement, a place assumed empty and clear, was a silent witness to horrors most refused to see Dot and Rex. Scratching at the concrete floor had opened the door to a nightmare no one wanted to face. The question remained, how many more? Secrets lay hidden beneath the surface? The courtroom buzzed with anticipation the day Edgar Rourke's trial began. Reporters packed the gallery, eager to capture every moment of a case that had gripped the entire region. Families of victims filled the seats, their faces marked with grief and hope for justice. Behind the scenes, Detective Dana Kessler prepared for the long battle ahead, her gaze steady as Rex rested quietly at her feet. The prosecution laid out a grim narrative. A man who had lured young women into a deadly trap, hiding their bodies beneath cold concrete floors, burying the truth in darkness. The evidence was overwhelming. Carolyn Pierce's remains, the purse stained with her blood found buried in Rourke's shed, phone records linking the victims to his properties, and Rex's role as the key to uncovering the hidden graves. The defense fought fiercely, casting doubt on the prosecution's story. They painted Rourke as a scapegoat, a broken man coerced into confessing under pressure. They argued that the real monster Lucas Shaw remained free, the true architect of the horrors. Throughout the trial, Rex's presence was a quiet reminder of the truth beneath the surface. Prosecutors introduced videos showing the dogs. Relentless scratching at the basement concrete, footage that resonated deeply with the jury. Dana watched Rex intently, knowing that beneath his calm exterior was a fierce determination to protect and uncover. Witness after witness took the stand, neighbors recalling late-night disturbances, forensic experts explaining the painstaking excavation, and finally, the detectives who pieced the case together. Each testimony added weight, slowly tightening the noose around Rourke's lies. Yet, despite the evidence, moments of tension pierced the courtroom. Rourke maintained his defiance, his eyes cold and calculating. He denied involvement in any crimes. Beyond Carolyn's death, refusing to implicate Shaw further. The defense seized these moments, sowing seeds of uncertainty. The jury deliberated long and hard, wrestling with questions of guilt and doubt. Outside, the community watched anxiously. For many, the trial was about more than one man. It was a reckoning with the darkness that had seeped unnoticed into their lives. When the verdict finally came, the courtroom held its breath. Guilty on multiple counts, sentenced to life without parole. Justice, in a way, had been served. Yet the scars left behind were deep, and the shadow of Lucas Shaw loomed large. And unresolved, Dana felt a bittersweet relief. The nightmare was not over, but a chapter had closed. Rex's quiet companionship reminded her that even in darkness, there could be light. The town began to heal slowly, though the memory of the basement beneath 412 Elm Street lingered, a stark reminder that some secrets refused to stay buried. The courtroom's heavy silence lingered long after the verdict was read. Edgar Rourke was led away in handcuffs, his expression unreadable, a man broken by his own sins, yet unwilling to fully confess. For the families of Carolyn Pierce and the others, justice was a bittersweet victory. Grief had found a semblance of closure, but wounds remained fresh, raw beneath the surface. Detective Donna Kessler stepped outside the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun, the noise of reporters swirling around her. Cameras flashed questions, shouted, but her focus was elsewhere. On Rex, who padded quietly by her side, his calm presence a steady anchor. The dog who had scratched at the concrete floor, who had sniffed out secrets no one else could find, was more than a partner. He was a hero. The local news crowned him the hero dog of Indiana, and Dana was awarded a medal for her role in the case. Yet, behind the accolades, she struggled to shake the haunting memories. Nights were the hardest. The quiet of her home was broken by echoes of scratching paws, the cold chill of concrete beneath her fingertips. Dreams replayed the basement over, and over the smell of damp, the silence that screamed secrets. She often found herself waking in a sweat, Rex curled at her feet, his eyes alert even in sleep. The house at 412 Elm Street was sealed off, condemned and abandoned for good. Local authorities posted warnings to keep curious onlookers away. The once sleepy neighborhood had been transformed by fear and suspicion. Trust eroded by the horrors buried beneath. Dana made the difficult decision to retire from the force a year after the trial. The weight of the case, the darkness she'd faced, had taken its toll. But she took Rex with her, the dog whose instincts had unraveled the mystery, whose loyalty never wavered. In their quiet new home. Away from flashing lights and police radios, Donna found solace in routine. Rex adapted quickly, enjoying long walks and the safety of open fields. But the bond between them was deeper than companionship. It was forged in the shadows of a basement where truth had clawed its way to the surface. The community slowly began to heal. Memorials for Carolyn and the unidentified child were erected, small acts of remembrance amid lingering sorrow. The case sparked changes in local law enforcement protocols, increased cooperation between counties, improved tracking of missing persons, and greater attention to seemingly routine calls. But beneath the surface, questions remained unanswered. Lucas Shaw, the shadowy figure at the heart of the investigation, remained at large. His elusiveness haunted the detectives who had chased him, a ghost in the night that refused to be caught. Years later, the story of the basement beneath 412 Elm Street would be retold in true crime podcasts and documentaries, each retelling peeling back layers of fear and fascination. Dana's voice was heard, recounting the moment Rex scratched at the concrete, the moment when the house finally gave up its secrets. For Dana and Rex, the story was more personal. It was about the quiet courage it took to face the unknown, to dig beneath the surface when everyone else looked away. And in the stillness of their new life, Rex's gaze often lingered on the shadows, as if remembering the secrets they had unearthed, secrets that would never be forgotten. Years had passed since the basement at 412 Elm Street revealed its darkest secret, but the silence that had once settled over Maplewood was fragile, always on the verge of cracking open again. Detective Donna Kessler and Canine Rex had moved on from the nightmare, their lives forever changed by the truth hidden beneath that cold concrete floor. Yet, even as time marched forward, the story lingered, a shadow etched into the town's memory. The basement itself was sealed tight, a steel door welded shut, a warning to any who might dare pry open the past. The house was slated for demolition, but the foundation, where bones and secrets lay buried, would never be disturbed again. It was a tomb not just for Carolyn Pierce and the unidentified child, but for a legacy of silence and fear. A true crime documentary crew arrived in Maplewood years later, drawn by the chilling tale that had captivated audiences nationwide. Cameras rolled as Dana recounted the story, the first time Rex scratched at the floor, the painstaking excavation, the courtroom battles, and the lingering questions about the elusive Lucas Shaw. Her voice was steady, but carried the weight of years. the pain of loss, and the triumph of uncovering truth. Footage showed Rex in action, alert and focused, nose to the ground, scratching at the concrete like a silent sentinel demanding justice. The dog had become a symbol, a reminder that sometimes the smallest actions can uncover the deepest secrets. Yet, the documentary also hinted at what the official records never fully revealed. The basement silence was incomplete. Beneath the sealed floor, other mysteries waited. Items were found during excavation: fragments of jewelry, scraps of fabric, pieces of paper faded with time. They suggested lives interrupted, stories unfinished. Some locals whispered that the basement was a crossroads for secrets too dangerous to expose. Others believed more victims might still be hidden beneath layers of concrete and forgotten dirt. Dana knew the truth was complex. The world was not always neat or complete at home. Rex aged gracefully, his muzzle speckled with gray, his eyes still sharp despite the years. Dana often sat by the window, watching the sunset, thinking of the lives changed forever by one dog's instinct to scratch at concrete. She believed Rex had been more than a partner. He was a guide into darkness, leading them where humans couldn't see. And sometimes, late at night, when the house was quiet, she heard the echo of scratching, a reminder that beneath calm surfaces, the earth keeps its secrets, waiting for the right nose, the right heart, to uncover them once more. The story of 412 Elm Street ended not with certainty, but with vigilance. It was a tale of courage, loss, and the relentless pursuit of truth. A testament to the bond between a woman and her dog, who refused to let silence bury Justice Dot as the documentary faded to black. A final plaque appeared on screen. To Rex, who heard what no one else could. And beneath the concrete, in the cold, silent basement, the secrets remained, waiting,